like a virus or something. It just like infected me, and it happened so quickly. It was like I was right there, like agreeing to every single thing, and I don't know how that happened. Then now I can sit here and like look back and be like, why did I do that?
So a couple days ago, I shared a story on my TikTok account about a young woman who was booked to speak at a college campus and share her experience of quote unquote detransitioning. Now, just so happened that at the last minute, this entire talk, seminar, whatever it may be, was canceled. And instead of sharing her experience of going from the state of mental illness and being targeted by the alphabet community or the alphabet mafia, she was not given the opportunity to speak in front of those who would likely need it most, which is young folks. And since hearing that story, or at least having an opportunity to dig into that, I have been reignited when it comes to this issue of the old transformers, right? The whole trans issue. Now, a couple years ago, when this started to really take on some real steam, when people were no longer looking at it as just this sort of fringe, weird thing, which it is those things for sure. But when it started making its way into the mainstream, I did not take it as seriously as I should have individually. I don't know about y'all, but I believe that this was going to be a sort of phase, a trend, and it was going to make its way out as fast as it came in. I didn't know that for the next 10 years, we were going to be finding ourselves in a place where millions of our kids have now been targeted, have been the victims of this very evil agenda. And I'm not mincing words. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not being extra. When I say evil, I mean evil. This is the definition of wickedness. This is a demonic spirit that is operating in, unfortunately, many of these young people who, instead of being protected by the parents around them and the environment around them, they have been made essentially targets for these sick and twisted and depraved individuals who want to see this of them. So that being said, I just want to take a moment to share a story that I came across of, a youngin who went through this experience themselves. I have not watched the video throughout. I just saw it surfacing on X and it popped up a few times in my feed. And I said, you know what? This might be helpful to somebody. And I'm not expecting for, the audience for this video to be a whole bunch of kids who are in this place. But even if it does the job of solidifying just how serious and important this is, for somebody out there, then I believe that we have done our job. So without further ado, let's get into this.
An entire life that should have been mine. That was my birthright. I don't know how this happened to me. And I'm just so angry. I'm so sad. I just don't know how this happened. Like a virus or something. It just like infected me, and it happened so quickly. It was like I was right there, like agreeing to every single thing. And I don't know how that happened. Then now I can sit here and like look back and be like, why did I do that? It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense. If I just would have waited. If I just would have waited.
Now, this is one of those situations, and I don't just mean the story of this individual here. I mean, overall, when it comes to our kids, it's one thing to have grown folks, adults making adult decisions, and something entirely different when you have kids who are in need of our help. And I'm not saying that the grown folks, the wokety woke folk on the left don't need our prayers and our help and genuine counseling, therapy, psychiatry in some extreme sort of situations. But what I am saying is that, again, the kids are susceptible. This young lady here blames herself for having not waited when there has been a system built around them that not only encourages and quote unquote affirms them in this delusion, but that actually pushes them to do so. And I've listened to enough of these stories shared and people's testimonials, etc., of even coming out of this to understand that there is a concerted effort to pump these kids into this machine. Now, of course, there is the financial aspect, which is how much money you make off of a lifelong customer from childhood to the end of their lives, right? That is a very real part of this, but there's also the twisted and warped aspect of this. There is the spiritual quotient of this, which is demonic. Now, if you may, you can go back in your own scriptures and you will see that this is not a new spirit. The one of sexual perversion, not new. The one of the warping of gender, not new. Now, I believe that Pastor Jonathan Kahn refers to this as the goddess known as Ishtar or something of that nature, who essentially is the goddess of these perversions, including turning men to women and women to men. Right? Some folks out there believe this to just be myth and its analogy. I just so happen to not be one of those people. When you've seen and witnessed enough evil, you start to recognize that the depth of this is far beyond simple psychology and whoopsie daisy. So when I speak of the agenda, I mean there is a spiritual to physical agenda that is taking place and it's manifesting itself in the physical. So anyway, and we will watch the entirety of this story here. It's only about 3 or so minutes. But what broke my heart most and still does to this day is that these kids blame themselves for something that was supposed to have been done by those who are, again, put in a place of responsibility for them. And it's not to say a kid can't make a conscious decision. Of course they can. But it is oftentimes a parent around them who is going to sign off on whatever is necessary to put them in this place. Whether it is a teacher or, education system that pulls a child from the parents. Yes, that was happening in California. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's still happening today. A place that I grew up. I know how woke that place is. I know it pumps out nothing more than woke garbage. And so for them to strip kids from their parents, it's not new to them.
If I just would have waited and let myself heal. I can't have kids.
Oh.
I'll never lose my virginity. I feel like I'm left to just accept the scraps of the life that I could have had. I had this full life that I'm now having to mourn, while also living in the present moment with the life that feels just like the scraps of what could have been. I don't know how to be happy in that. I don't know how to be okay with that. I hate when people are like, everything happens for a reason. No, this didn't happen for a reason. It's just...
No, there was a reason. It's called depravity. It's called evil. It's called replacing the true and living God with the God of self, or quote unquote self-identity. So yeah, that was the reason.
It's a tragedy. Just call it what it is. I don't want to use the word indoctrinated, but I was young and I was sad and I was impressionable and I thought this would fix everything. I don't know what to do with any of it. I think I just feel a lot different also though from most detrans girls or detrans women, detrans girls and women, because I've had bottom surgery. Every girl I know has it. They still have this part of them. And I don't have that. I don't have anything anymore. It's just so sad. It just sucks so bad. This is just something I'll have to live with. There's no fixing it. There's no making it better. I have to live like this for the rest of my life and figure out a way to be okay with it. I'm not making this video for sympathy or anything. It's just I'm wanting to express what's honestly going on in my reality right now as a detrans woman, as a woman who thought she was trans, and transitioned. Lived as trans for 8 years. Had top surgery, a full hysterectomy, bottom surgery. Went all the way as far as one could go, and then woke up and realized that I made the biggest fucking mistake of my life. I was so sure. It's just crazy.
So, why is it that we don't hear those stories often? Is it because they're not happening as frequently as those who are overjoyed and love the decision that they've made to live in a reality that is non-existent? Is it because so many people are happy with this choice? The truth of the matter is, and this isn't just according to my own personal belief, this is fact. It's because this is not the convenient narrative. It doesn't go along with the agenda. And when I say agenda, I'm not speaking of some sort of, deep-seated conspiracy theory. It's right in front of us. The perversion is in front of us. What they're looking for us to buy into has always been right there. It's plain. They're not hiding it in the same way they may have in time past, right? That's why a Netflix is getting canceled by half the country and things of that nature. It's because people are seeing it right in front of them. It's happening on these college campuses as well as K through 12 campuses. The youngest of youngins are being exposed to this depravity. Now, I did want to address this part, and this was something that just downloaded into my spirit at this moment. The devil never shows up. Well, I'm not going to say never, but oftentimes will not show up with the horns, the red skin, etc. No. The devil shows up, as scripture states, an angel or a being of light, right? Every single time there is temptation in some form or fashion, there is something that is desired. We can go back to the original sin of man, not just original sin. That's pride, and that is of Lucifer. But back in the garden, are you sure that's what he said? This was a question of the serpent. Are you sure? He said, you will surely die. Maybe he's afraid that you will be like him and that you will know and discern all things like him. A half truth there. Are you sure you will surely die? You will immediately die. Are you sure? Are you sure that's what will happen? And so it's always sowing seeds of doubt in opposition to God, your creator, and natural order. Are you sure? I mean, maybe it's actually the opposite of what you've been told it is. Maybe it's not depravity. Maybe it's not bondage. Maybe it's freedom. The offering is always made to look good. Is it not good to eat? Look at it. Get you some. And so when these kids are struggling with, and even adults, it's not just the kids necessarily when it comes to this conflict, this identity crisis, as opposed to Christ is, a little bar for y'all. When it comes to this identity crisis, it is always presented as something that will be freedom. It will be liberation. It will be a reclaiming of self. And in an essence, there's a half truth to that, right? There is an essence of quote unquote self, but which self is that? The self of the sin nature, the self which is separate from God, the self which is deviated from its creator. Yeah, it's a reclaiming of that self. And this is the result of that. It always leads in torment. It always leads in greater angst. It always leads in the perpetuation and even the doubling and tripling down of the very same pain points that you experienced before you went into the so-called cure. It's like when you look at, the culture of this so-called liberation, the free expression of sexuality and things of that nature, right? That was promised to be, especially to women through feminism, that was promised to be freedom. This is freedom. This is empowerment. You will reclaim your power, ladies. Well, turns out that what you actually get is in the physical, and that's not even half of it, I would say. But in the physical, you end up with a child that you did not account for. And so you end up in deeper darkness. You end up in deeper sin, deeper depravity, because you'll likely take the life of the unborn, who is a child. According to God, I knew you before you were in your mother's womb. So, whichever way you want to put that, you can call it a cluster if you want. It doesn't change the reality of what that is. That is a child there. That is a formation of a human being. And you take the life of that one because essentially you were told this is freedom and liberation. Or maybe it doesn't go that path. Maybe instead you catch something. Maybe you don't catch something physically, but you sure will catch something emotionally. Now you're tied to this person. Now you feel an emotional bondage with this person and can't separate yourself. Now your own psychology is warped and twisted. Now you're growing colder and colder, and you have the inability to bond and connect. There is the end result of the quote unquote freedom and liberation that we're offered. I used to struggle and wrestle with this for much of my young life and when I say young, I mean even going into my 20s. Why is it that it seems everything God is commanding is restrictive? Why is it always thou shalt not, thou shalt not? Not realizing that the greatest freedom is to live in alignment with the true and living God and his natural order and law. It's like discipline, right? There's a saying by a man by the name of Jocko Willink, former Navy SEAL, I believe it is, or Marine, Navy SEAL, one of the two. And he states that discipline is freedom. Now, to most people, that sounds crazy because discipline sounds like something I don't want to do when I don't want to do it. Discipline sounds like something hard. I want to eat the cookies, but instead I got to eat, I got to eat the prime rib. I got to eat the steak. I got to eat the chicken. I got to eat. Okay, so instead of, sleeping around, I have to discipline myself in that area and have self-control and preserve that aspect for a real connection, a real bond, a real relationship under the covenant of marriage, the promise of marriage, the consistency and groundedness of marriage. That sounds like restriction, God. I think I'm going to do it my way. Then you go ahead and do it your way. It's my buddy over there. Then you go ahead and do it your way. How does that go for you? Congratulations, you played yourself. We serve an exacting God. Exacting. Law is law. That's why even the law of salvation is law. It is exacting. When you do this, you get this. When you don't do this, you don't get this. It is very simple. And love says that you have the freedom of choice. Love says you can go ahead and chop off your whatever it is as a grown man, or, add something that's not supposed to be there and chop off the breast or whatever. Free will says that you get to do that. That is in the context of love. Now, it's still a deviation. It's still a miss, but you get to do that if you want. And again, the part that breaks my heart is the adults who have been assigned to care for these children are no longer the ones who are correcting, but instead they are quote unquote affirming. We've been sold this lie of affirmation. You're being affirmed in your depravity. You're being affirmed in your darkness. And so you will never actually see light. And now we have this brokenness. And, there is healing that comes as a result of salvation, which is free for all, once and for all, but it's still a choice, right? Folks get mad about that. Well, again, that's the choice. You have a loving creator who gives you that opportunity and made a way out, or a way in, I guess you could say. So for this one, there is healing, but that is the reality of the result of going the other way. That's what it looks like right there. It's right there. It ends in brokenness. It ends in misery. And the consequences are oftentimes dire and cannot be reversed in the physical. Now, thankfully, we're not going to be in this physical right here forever and ever, but In this lifetime, you may still deal with those consequences. You may have committed a crime, and though now you have repented and truly turned from your ways, you are a different man, different woman, in and out, through and through, but you're still in jail. That's the consequences of the decisions made. And so again, that's why I pray that as adults, there can be a boldness and a braveness. And, the kids don't need best friends. They need a parent. The kids don't need bestie. They don't need TikTok mom. They need somebody who's going to tell them the truth. They don't need somebody who's going to join them in their depravity. I covered a story a while back of, I think it's Denise Richards or something like that. Yeah, Denise Richards. Charlie Sheen. Charlie Sheen's ex-wife. And her daughter, 18 years old, starts up an OnlyFans account. And the mother, as some sort of effort or measure to have her daughter not be bullied, creates her own account and starts creating her own quote unquote adult content. I'm going to drop this bar on y'all that my father dropped on me not too long ago, about a couple weeks back. And it's become a part of my psyche at this point. He said, that a subculture has become the mainstream culture when the parents stop correcting the children. Simple. So we need to get back to that place. And that means, parents, you need to build a stable foundation in your own home. And the only stable foundation that exists is the true and living God, period. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Now, if you'd like to stay around, make sure to click that little subscribe button down there, or you can show some love by going to the description below and clicking on the button titled Buy Me a Coffee. Leave a little something there, or click on the Cash App. Leave a little something here. Till the next time, peace.
I've been up for hours, I've been up for days, staring at the ceiling, I've been counting strays, I've been in my feelings, I've been out of mind, I've been getting visions of the other kind, I've been up for weeks, I'm in the counting blessings over counting sheep, I can never be the type to limit when it comes to me, I used to be the pleaser for the people I ain't even need,